many teams are focusing the Finn. Thought that might be an option, but they say, you know what? We know you're going to try and ban away this Black Feather if we don't take it here. So they take the Black Feather. This just blows up. Like, if G2 was trying to go that protect the carry composition again, that completely blows it up. They have to change their strategy.
However, the Lance is a flex pick, so they can still change their strategy. It's not already over for G2, but definitely you don't get to go for that same Celeste composition that they maybe would have liked. And now G2, I mean, could you even consider just banning away the Celeste now that you know that you don't want to play it?
I almost think you have to, because SK have that Black Feather. That's the hardest counter to the Celeste, and they have it on their side. It's kind of like the Catherine Idris type of thing, where, you know, it's the strongest counter of it. If you have the strongest counter to this, and what is considered by a lot of players one of these stronger heroes, you are just going to be golden, and there's not too many answers, I think, that G2 could pick up. But the question then becomes, does Kvalifar run that Celeste to the same level? Because it's not really the type of hero we see him play often.
I do like the Idris ban a little bit more than the Celeste, just because Kvalifar has been performing great on the Idris, and he's just such a strong late game carry. Celeste, you might be able to get on her and kill her. Idris is a little bit more mobile with his A ability, so he can get around your abilities if he needed to. What's scary here is if SK pick up the Lyra, they now can flex their last pick into either a Celeste or a jungler and putting Black Feather in lane. So that's what I was going to say, and Lyra is a really strong pick.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they grabbed the Lyra instead of the Celeste there, because it's almost challenging, saying, G2, are you comfortable enough to try and take the Celeste? Now they can take it as their last pick if they want, but they get to see the entire G2 composition first, and it is going to be that Fortress and Vox. Again, a little bit of flexibility with the Lance and the Fortress, but I would expect this to be still Dark Potato on the Lance.
No, I actually think it's going to be Fortress in the jungle. This is the composition we saw yesterday with Vox, Fortress CP with the Tension Bow Aftershock proc build, and Lance in the roaming position. It's a very strong build or comp, especially if Vox goes for the double TT breaking point build, where he has so much attack speed that he can proc those bleed.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that build, actually, because we saw it very early. I think it was the first game of the day that we saw it, and it hasn't come through yet, but then, or since then. But then Scarf going to be for SK. So similar to the Celeste, but a little bit more of the AoE, and I think that's largely for when those Fortress Wolves come out. You throw a Spitfire out, it can hit all three Wolves potentially.
Yeah, and I like Scarf better than Celeste here, just because he's a lot stronger at kiting away Fortress. When Fortress Wolves come at you, the Spitfire goes through them all. It deals damage to all three of those Wolves and helps you get rid of them early on in the team fight. So I like it against this comp over Celeste.
And not only that, but the goop to be able to keep them off you. Obviously, Fortress is really good at trying to get him and his teammates onto someone. You throw down a goop right in front of you, makes their job a lot more difficult.
All right, so we've looked at the whole compositions. Obviously, very aggressive composition coming out from G2. That's a very different style to what we're used to seeing from this team, though. Are we expecting this to be perfect execution? Do we expect G2 to be like on the front foot during the early game? Because that's not what we usually see from this team.
I think they can't with Fortress against Black Feather. Black Feather is really good at dueling in the jungle. If they manage to get ahead, it would be great for them, because it would allow them to play as aggressive as they need to. But if they don't, SK's composition is going to have much longer range and so much sustain that they can just keep sieging turret after turret, and whenever G2 tries to engage, they just peel back. And you have the Bulwark too from Lyra, such a great disengage tool.
All right, we'll see if they're going to be able to go for those disengages, how these fights are going to be happening. I'm excited to see this one coming on through. Different style coming out for G2. SK, they looked great in Game 1, but G2 certainly gave them a run for their money. Hashtag Vainglory 8 on Twitter to let us know who you're supporting. But it's time for Game 2 to get underway. It's time to pass it to Dowsy and the Source.
It's the Vainglory 8 Spring Champions up against the Vainglory 8 Summer Champions here in Europe, fighting to be the Autumn Challengers champions and go to Worlds to be EU's hope. It's pretty exciting stuff. G2 versus SK. And after the success of Mouse running this Vox Fortress Lance composition yesterday, Source, Hundor actually tweeted out, Mouse using our composition. So he's claiming that they came up with it, and now they're looking to show us exactly why they came up with it.
Well, we'll see whether or not G2 can perform on it. They may have been the masterminds behind it, but it's possible Mouse were the ones who perfected it. So we'll see how well they managed to make it happen. We also have another Vox, and we've seen a lot of interesting Vox builds. Let's see what this one's going to be.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited to see whether or not G2 are going to change up the item builds. Yesterday, I'm the Doom, a very interesting build on the Fortress with the Null Wave, the Fountain, the Crucible, a very supportive jungle, Tension Bow, Aftershock, Tricky ran the double Tornado Trigger, which was very, very interesting as well with a breaking point and was it a Tension Bow? I'm not sure if I remember correctly. I think it was a Tension Bow.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's going to be very interesting to see if G2, you know, obviously they've claimed on Twitter that they came up with it. I don't know whether or not that's between G2 and Mouse, but you know, if they did have kind of an idea of this composition, it's something that they like to run, then maybe they have a different idea how it's played, or maybe it's exactly the same.
Well, there's a lot of mobility, there's a lot of kiting. If your opponent decides they want to engage onto you, you can walk it back, but you also have plenty of chase potential. A wait for it plus attack of the pack, you can just hunt down a single target. And, you know, Cavalifar on this Scarf, yes, Scarf has plenty of damage, but it can be dangerous. Dark Potato in trouble.
In a bit of trouble, it is going to be that knockback from Kiana Nakoa, but Tyra says, you want to come forward? I've got you. Hegman going to go forward. Hundor now, the one engaged upon it. Spitfire going to connect. Cavalifar, though, can't find the goop to find extra damage, but First Blood going over to Tyra's, just being an aggressive Black Feather, looking to steal jungle, and Hundor, is he dead? Yes, he is! Hegman with that auto attack from Lyra, going to take down Hundor as well. SK 2-0.
This is a good week for Hegman. Having a good series of games. I'm surprised that G2 was willing to stick around that long. Yes, you don't want to miss out on any farm, but Hundor stuck around at very, very low health. Had already used the healing potion, so it's going to be a rough time for G2 for a little while, at least until they feel that they've got some of those item power spikes onto the Vox. Maybe once Hundor picks up an item or two, they can really get aggressive.
Balafar going to just try and tape over this lane. The thing that Scarf can do so well in the carry position is push consistently, and with the changes to turrets in 2.8, now 1,000 less health provides a lot of ability for the Scarf to take them down very quickly with the Spitfire and Goops. Looks like G2 may be changing things up a little bit. You've got that Storm Guard banner in the inventory of Dark Potato on this jungle fortress. So already a difference in item builds, but perhaps it's just for early jungle farming. May just decide to get an aftershock straight afterwards. Does look like G2 going to maybe be on a bit of a slow burner. It was the one thing that Mouse did very well in yesterday's games, is that they kind of took over with this composition. Were very aggressive early on.
Yeah, and I think it's possible that once he goes for the Storm Crown, like, the entire purpose is to keep up in the jungle, as Tyra is already counter-jungling him again.
Yeah, and the Vision just not doing anything to help, unfortunately, there for G2. Not able to stop that one from happening, though they did get eyes on Tyra's. SK, at the moment, in a good spot. If they're able to kind of just keep the head above G2 and get Cavalifar towards a 3-4 damage item spike on this Guff, then they're going to have so much late game potential.
G2 stepping over into the bush. Nakoa was looking for a target and didn't find anything. Now is going to get a little bit of abuse from Hegman. I don't think that G2 really wants to pick their fight just yet. They took so much damage, and they have to be worried about, you know, Tyrus sneaking around the jungle, because the moment they step forward, Tyrus might come up from behind them. And Hundor also can't really clear the waves just yet. Scarf is reaching that point where he can pretty much instantly clear a wave. And Tyrus is going to continue to harass Dark Potato in the jungle.
Well, Tyrus is going to pull the attention of G2 down, but is fairly safe in doing so. The Frostburn will be completed here for Cavalifar. And on the other side, a Sora Blade comes through for Hundor and Kiana Nakoa. Dark Potato looking like he's going to go towards that Aftershock after all as his first item, just using the banner for the clear times. Hegman on this Lyra, not opting in for a Crucible first, instead the Fountain. So something that North American Lyras tend to do, build that Crucible and just heavy health items for the extra heals. Instead, going to be pretty happy with a Fountain.
Yeah, a little worried about the possible Mortal Wound coming out from Dark Potato, but that's some good damage back into Tyra as they don't manage to land the Impale. I'd be scared if I were SK.
You have to be very, very careful. The aggression that can come out of this composition, we already saw it yesterday. Mouse's game 1. Very, very quick, gets Vox in there, and the lands and the fortress, and you can just delete a single target, and that's exactly what they're going to look to do against Kavalapar's Scarf here. And I appreciate the Idris ban in the draft as well. You know, out of the 3 CP laners that SK were likely looking towards since they picked up Black Feather already. Idris, with a Frostburn as Kavalifar loves to build, throws a Chakram through, rolls on back, and he's pretty safe, right? But once you remove that Idris from the draft, then you've got a Celeste and you've got a Scarf, both far less mobile in their ability to escape, and so a little bit easier to execute against.
So it does look like Hundor has gone with the opening Sorrow Blade, so I don't think we're seeing the double Tornado trigger just yet. I think that one might have been a tricky special in terms of interesting item builds. Serpent's Mask is going to be finished off by Tyrus, the Frostburn is there for the Volifar, so we are seeing some of these items come online. We're getting closer to level 8 for some of these carries, so maybe we see some more significant damage coming out of Scarf, especially if the Spitfires continue to land on Hundor.
Yeah, no, the Spitfires have to be careful of them. How Kavalifar uses his goop as well, how Tyrus uses his on points. Good Giphy War, Tyrus able to escape. Dragon's Breath gonna come through, there's no CC to stop it. Hundor, he's burning alive, gonna throw the silence through, but the Fountain comes out. Tyrus looks for the kill, can't find it, but a Spitfire connects. Now it's Kavalifar trying to escape, but Keanu, he may go down. It's a double coming through for Kavalifar, and Hegman's not done yet. Portal's forward, Dark Potato looks like he's in trouble, but the Spitfire doesn't connect, and that will be the end of the story there. SK able to find 2 in that fight.
Yeah, a great opening from G2, but they just couldn't manage to connect it, and reaching the point where Scarf gets scary, especially with the Dragon's Breath landing onto all of those targets, slowing everybody down. Hunter did a good job of being able to pick off Tyrus, but it was a little bit of a struggle, and you know, again, the opening on this Githian wall is just really, really good. Sets up the initial stun, but they were all standing on top of that group, and I don't think Hundor realized that just because there were so many bodies there, so many particle effects, a nice Spitfire to finish it off, and then, you know, a little bit of an overcommit from Ken Nakoa.
Look at that damage onto Hundor there. The Spitfires doing so much work. It's going to force him to go back to base, and I think SK can actually get a turret off this if they play it right. Good block comes through from Keanu Nakoa on the Spitfire. That's going to mean that Hundor should be able to get back to the lane before this turret is affected too badly. G2 have to play this next little skirmish correctly. If they want to stop too much aggression from SK, and you can see SK moving back, but it's a 3-minute kill! Huge from Keanu. Tyrus, though, where are you going? The Dragon's Breath's going to come around and a Fountain to heal up. Hundor burning alive. Dark Potato trying to provide the team with a bit of respite. But G2, the damage is unreal onto them. They've already used their Fountain. SK has their own, and Hundor gets sniped by Kavalifar. SK dominating so far in the early game, and Hundor and G2 have just not made this composition work. A portal from Hegman. Keanu is dead. Hegman, newbie to the team, showing up huge and just providing the big plays to allow his team extra kills.
It looks so good for G2 every time. These amazing openings from Keanu Nakoa, but they just don't have the damage to follow up onto it. They're a much more of a slow roll composition. They need those breaking point stacks to build up for Hundor, and they're just never allowed to do that. The fight just doesn't go long enough.
It's going to be the gold miner going over to SK, and the gold lead that they have accumulated so far, Source, is huge at this 10-minute mark. They've got themselves a 3.5k lead. They've got Kavalifar up to that 3-item spike with that clockwork. Now looking for a broken myth. He's at 10 minutes, got 3 CP items. It's unreal. And at 12 minutes, it's possible he has the broken myth. If he has 4 CP items at 13 to 14 minutes, then SK are just playing at a pace that's just almost unstoppable.
So you mentioned at the beginning the ban out of the Idris, taking that out, taking away that kiting potential. But are you really going to want to use a composition like G2's, which is basically a run-at-me composition, into how much damage is coming out of those Spitfires and those Goops from Kavalifar? It's unreal how much damage he's able to do with just one of those combos. And the last 2-3 fights, it's just been Hundor standing on top of that, either, being forced to position into that because of where Lyra is or because he's kiting out the Black Feather and Tyrus is forcing him to run one direction or another. But it's just getting so difficult for Hundor to survive throughout these team fights or to even dish out the damage to build up those breaking point stacks.
Yeah, he's currently struggling heavily in this matchup, and Kvalifar is just sniping continuously. Keanu and Nakoa are going to move on in, but this time it's an impale missing. Nash is going to shut down the fight immediately, and Keanu going to take so much damage, so much punishment for missing. Oh, Hundor, the Spitfire, Headman dives on in, snares them all with the bright bullet, but the attack of the pack going to come out. Tyrus blocking up the impale with the Rose Offensive, but a silence comes through, and it silences 3. Dragon's Breath, here it comes! Kvalifar looking for Keanu, and he's going to burn him! And Hundor alive! It's a double for Tyrus, and it's the ace for SK.
Perfectly timed defense is coming out from SK. I thought GT was going to be able to turn that. They finally managed to get the silence. They finally managed to get some of the pace going, the attack of the pack to come out. But SK just kite it back perfectly. They get good damage into the back line. Tyrus is continuously harassing Hundor, and that's just allowing Kvalifar to just line up all of those shots and land every single Spitfire.
The difference between the way that SK are playing this compared to Fnatic yesterday is huge. Look at that. Already the passage in, the snare, and then the disengage. The Dragon's Breath able just to turn fights around, and Tyrus, instead of having a cruel, just so much more threatening on this Black Feather that G2 don't stand a chance. Incredible gameplay coming out of SK, incredible execution from them as well. And with this huge gold lead they have, 6,000, the broken myth getting closer and closer to reality for Kvalifar. It almost seems impossible for G2 to turn this around.
They need to get a serious engagement. They're going for it.
Looking for it, but can't find it. SK, Lyra gives them so much movement speed to just walk away with a single heal. That's just providing too much, I think, for the side of G2 to really deal with.
It looked like Dark Potato, in that previous engagement, might have actually gone to Valfar, but there isn't any follow-up damage. And, although he has the impulse, it's not going to be enough on this fortress to actually finish off Valfar, which means Hundor has to manage to kite around portions of the fight, and they haven't been able to do that. The gold miner will go over to the side of SK. The gold lead will continue to extend to 7k, and SK right now are having a dominating performance, and Hegman is just showing up today.
Yeah, sigils to get the team in and out of team fights. The portals have been on top of everything, and the ability to stop Fox and Fortress from re-engaging with the Bright Bulwark is huge. Look at this once more. SK disengaged. Impale, it misses. It's blocked up, and SK are looking to turn the fight around. The Dragon's Breath, Keanu and Nakoa able to stop it. Tyrus perhaps in a little bit of trouble, but he's looking for the kill, and he's gonna find it. It's gonna be Dark Potato looking for one, but they can't even find that. SK survive. Keanu, will he escape? No, he will not. And the ace is going to come through once more. Ace. 14 minutes, another ace. SK 12-1.
Great kiting out of SK, and again, Keanu Nakoa, he sets up what looks like a reasonably good team fight. Even after that Impale missed, he managed to cut the Dragon's Breath off. It looked like they were going to be able to do it, but there just isn't enough damage from the side of G2. Either Hundor needs to be positioned higher on the team fight so he can actually get the damage into Kvalifar, but every time he tries to do that, he even dived under that tower. I thought he might have had it, but not enough breaking point stacks, not enough damage. Has been forced to pick up that defensive item, has his Aegis, and it's so close for G2. You can see how much they could make this composition work, but they've been unable to execute it perfectly. And so far, it looks like Maus are the true masters of this strategy.
Yeah, G2 claiming to have invented it. Like you mentioned, perhaps it's Maus who perfected it. SK, broken myth on Kvalifar now. Tyrus, so tanky with the war treads as well for the re-engage, disengage potential. Just coordinating with Hegman. Such great synergy coming out of the team at, such short notice. The team bringing on Hegman only recently, but it seems like they've made it work fantastically. G2, this is the last hurrah for them. The Kraken spawned, and if they can't find a team fight win, SK are going to take that Kraken and look to finish this series.
The big problem is SK's composition is allowing for them to both engage and to be able to just kite back and slow things down. G2 at this point, they need SK to overcommit to something because they've chased and they've chased and they've chased and never been able to fully connect. And Kvalifar is bold enough to step up pretty much into the front line, doesn't need Hegman in front of him, is happy to have him on the side, has that sustain, has all of that protection. And Kvalifar is just able to look G2 in the eye and say, I dare you to run it. And it just hasn't worked out.
And now with the no wave gauntlet on Hegman, it's going to make things even more difficult for G2 to keep someone alive. Here's the gauge coming in, but the snare comes out and G2 just can't get there. The goop slows everyone down. The attack of the pack is dead, and G2's engage tool is gone. Now SK are free to just sit in the lane and push things up. G2 are forced to just watch as they do so.
Yeah, and Tyraz has had a good game just continuing to pressure, got all of that early counter jungling. I definitely think that made Dark Potato's life very, very difficult. They are going to consider the re-engage. Dark Potato's in trouble.
And look at where Keanu is. He's so far from the fight. Item silence goes out onto Hundle, burning alive, can't escape, can't use anything. It's a double for Kvalifar. And Hegman says, we want the triple. Kvalifar looking for the Spitfires. They connect. The goop, the Spitfire, a triple for Kvalifar, the master of the triple. They don't even need a Kraken at the moment. They're going to look to push on in with this minion wave coming down the lane. And SK are looking so strong this season. With Hegman by their side, SK going to take down the Vayne Crystal, and they're going to be our first finalist of week 1 of the autumn season.
An impressive 2-0 to come out of SK. They managed to run 2 great CP laning strategies, and I think Hegman has, proven that he has earned the right to be here in the VG8.
Oh, for sure. Red Option has stepped up his game, and SK have found themselves a very valuable captain indeed. SK through to the finals here in week 1. Let's throw it back to Munch.